What if the most famous neuroscience experiment ever used to prove free will doesn't exist was actually measuring something else entirely? And the researchers who know this field best quietly stopped believing the original interpretation years ago? That question isn't rhetorical. It has a paper trail. Clean animation undermine down, wrist movement at right, readiness potential onset at far left, conscious intention marker in the middle. Gaps labeled in millisecond. Here is the story most people have heard. In the early 1980s, Benjamin Libet wired up subjects, asked them to flick their wrist whenever they felt like it, and told them to note the position of a clock hand at the moment they first felt the urge to move. What he found became one of the most cited results in all of consciousness science. The brain's electrical activity, a slow buildup now called the readiness potential, began ramping up roughly 550 milliseconds before the movement. But subjects didn't report feeling the intention to move until about 200 milliseconds before. That's a gap of roughly 350 milliseconds during which, according to Libet's framing, the brain had already committed to acting before the person had any conscious awareness of deciding to act. The popular conclusion followed quickly. Your sense of deciding is an afterthought. The brain acts first. Consciousness narrates afterward. Free will, in any robust sense, may be a story you tell yourself rather than something you actually exercise. That reading spread far beyond the laboratory. It showed up in philosophy papers, in popular science books, in TED Talks. Sam Harris made it a centerpiece of his argument. The electrode cap became a cultural symbol, the image of science prying open the black box of agency and finding no one home. In the underlying data, the readiness potential is real. The timing gap is real. Those facts are not in dispute. What is in dispute is what those facts actually mean. Here is where it gets uncomfortable. Not for free will, but for the interpretation. The Libet paradigm rests on two assumptions that were never fully examined. First, that the readiness potential is a neural signature of the decision to move. Second, that subjects' reports of when they felt the urge to act are accurate clocks for conscious intention onset. Both assumptions have been seriously challenged, and not by philosophers looking to rescue agency, by neuroscientists working inside the same empirical tradition, on scientists working inside the same empirical tradition, on scientists working inside the same empirical tradition, on scientists working inside the same empirical tradition. Start with the first assumption. In 2014, a research team led by H.G. Joe, published in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, argued that the readiness potential does not primarily reflect the decision to move at all. What it reflects, they proposed, is something called intentional binding. The brain's tendency to compress the perceived time between an intention and its outcome. The RP on this reading is less like a starting gun and more like a retrospective smoothing operation. The brain tidies up the timeline of its own actions after the fact. Wiyukurai, metaphor visual, a car engine warming up, exhaust visible, ignition key still in hand. Engine warm cause decision to drive, measuring electrical buildup before a movement and calling it the moment of choice is, in their framing, like measuring a car warming up and calling it the decision to drive. The proxy and the reality are separated by a conceptual gap that Libet's original framing simply papered over. Now the second assumption, that the clock hand reports are reliable phenomenological timestamps. This is the one that should have been questioned from the start. We genuinely do not know what conscious intention is measuring when a subject reports the position of a clock hand at the moment they felt the urge to move. It is not clear those introspective reports are accurate clocks at all. They may be post hoc reconstructions, the mind backfilling a story about when it decided, rather than reading off a clean internal timestamp. The entire Libet debate hinges on the precision of a phenomenological self-report taken under conditions designed by experimenters. There is no independent ground truth for what that report actually tracks in neural time. These are not minor technical quibbles. They go to the heart of what the experiment was measuring. The case doesn't rest on theoretical objections alone. There are specific empirical results that change the picture considerably. In 2015, Joe and colleagues, publishing in Cortex, a journal devoted to the study of the nervous system and behavior, ran a version of the Libet paradigm with a critical twist. They compared meditators to non-meditators. Oit samnat with petid. Libshadatid vastis, one group in meditative posture, one group in standard lab chair posture, EEG caps on both. The finding was pointed. meditators showed significantly different temporal awareness of their intentions relative to the readiness potential buildup. They reported the felt sense of intention earlier, closer to the actual neural preparation, than the naive undergraduate sample Libet had used. Let that sit for a moment. The gap between neural preparation and conscious awareness, the very gap Libet used to argue that conscious will arrives too late to matter, is not a fixed biological constant. It varies with practice. It is trainable. If even a subset of humans can narrow or restructure that gap through attention training, then the average result from a naive undergraduate sample cannot be used as a universal claim about human agency. The outlier doesn't just complicate the finding, it falsifies the universalist interpretation. A 2016 review by Schmidt, Joe, and Whitman, published in Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews, extended this framing by positioning slow cortical potentials as moderators of voluntary action, not determinants of it. In their reading, the RP is one input into an ongoing dynamic self-regulation process, one that consciousness participates in, just not in the millisecond snapshot way the original paradigm assumed. There is also the question of what else modulates the readiness potential that has nothing obvious to do with decisions. A 2020 study published in Nature Communications by Park, Barnoud, and Trang found that the RP is coupled with breathing cycles. The phase of your breath at the moment you act influences the amplitude and timing of the preparatory signal.
Overlay of respiratory cycle waveform and readiness potential waveform, subtle synchronization, visible dyes, rhythms in ways that Libet's original interpretation didn't account for at all.
Against all of this, it is only fair to acknowledge the counterpressure in the field. John Dylan Haynes and colleagues used fMRI decoding to push the apparent unconscious decision window back even further, up to 10 seconds before subjects reported awareness of their intention. If taken at face value, that makes the anti-free will case stronger, not weaker. Haynes and Libet's intellectual heirs have not conceded. Hawkwan Lau and colleagues have argued, from the perceptual metacognition side, that conscious access is far more active in action generation than the RP literature implies. But that debate has not converged either. Researchers at whiteboards, back to back, drawing opposite arrows, representing genuine field disagreement. The Schmidt et al., moderator framing, and the Joe et al., intentional binding work, are not the final word. They are, however, strong enough to make the original conclusion that the readiness potential demonstrates consciousness arrives too late to matter, untenable as a simple fact. It remains a live interpretive dispute, not a settled science. What does any of this mean for the way you experience your own choices? Not what you might expect. This video is not arguing that free will is vindicated, that neuroscience got it wrong, or that you can relax and trust your conscious deliberations completely. That would be overcorrecting in the other direction. What it means is more unsettling and, arguably, more interesting. The story you have probably absorbed, that science has quietly proven the self is a narrator rather than an agent, is not what the careful science actually says. It is what a particular interpretation of a particular paradigm, run on a particular population, in a particular laboratory setting, was taken to imply when it was conscripted into a philosophical argument it was never designed to settle. The relationship between neural preparation and conscious access appears to be plastic. Attention changes it, practice changes it, even your breathing phase at the moment of action changes it. If the gap Libet measured is not a fixed property of human consciousness but a variable one, shaped by training, attention, and bodily state, then the question of agency becomes not whether it exists, but under what conditions it operates, and how those conditions might be cultivated. That is a very different question, and it is the one the evidence, read carefully, actually points toward. Here is the conclusion this evidence reluctantly suggests, and it is not a comfortable one for either side of the debate. If Joe and colleagues are right, that meditators can access their pre-movement intentions earlier, closer to the actual neural buildup, then the unconscious decision Libet thought he had found may partly be an artifact of untrained introspection, not an immutable feature of the mind. That would mean the most famous neuroscience argument against free will was, at least in part, measuring attentional skill. Refo, the field has not resolved this. The two camps, one reading the readiness potential as evidence that conscious will is post hoc, the other reading it as one signal among many in a dynamic regulatory process, are still generating data, still arguing, and still not converging, which leaves the honest position here: we do not yet have the tools to settle what we thought we were measuring. And that uncertainty is not a failure of neuroscience, it is the actual state of the science. The research behind this video draws from Nature Communications, Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews, Cortex, a journal devoted to the study of the nervous system and behavior, Neuroimage, BMC Neuroscience, IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Magazine, the quarterly magazine of the Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society, Cognitive Neuroscience. Every claim traces to a published source. Full citations are in the description below. If the way this channel thinks about neuroscience resonates with you, subscribing helps this work reach people who'd appreciate it. New videos on the science of mind every week.